A black man is casually walking down the street when he's suddenly stopped and harassed by a group of white cops. They accuse him of being involved in something shady, but something about him just doesn't add up. As they escalate the situation, they don't realize they're about to make the biggest mistake of their careers. It's only when the man reveals his true identity, a retired federal judge, that the officers freeze in disbelief. But why was he targeted in the first place? And what happens when the officers realize they've just crossed a line they can't undo? Stick around, because what happens next will change everything they thought they knew about power, respect, and justice. The cops exchange confused glances as the judge stands there, calmly watching their shock. They're unsure if they should apologize or double down on their actions. But it's too late. The damage is done. The judge's reputation alone should command respect, yet their prejudice clouds their judgment. They've made an enemy of someone who once held immense power in the legal world. The tension is palpable as one officer, still skeptical, steps forward to ask for ID. But the judge only shakes his head. "You should know who I am by now," he says, his voice cold, measured. They had no idea who they were messing with, and now they're in deep, far deeper than they could have imagined. The mystery grows, but they don't yet know what's at stake. The officers exchange uneasy glances, trying to make sense of the situation. They can't figure out if they're in the presence of someone important or just a man trying to throw his weight around. The senior officer, Officer Grant, eyes the judge suspiciously. "What's your game, huh? Trying to play us?" he asks, his voice rising with authority, but underneath, there's a hint of uncertainty. The judge remains unfazed. "It's not a game. You've already made your move." He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't flinch. It's as if the years of courtroom battles have given him an almost unnerving calm in the face of intimidation. The young officer, Officer Harris, visibly looks uncomfortable. She's new, eager to prove herself, and her nerves get the best of her. She leans in, trying to make sense of the man in front of her. Are you serious?" The judge sighs, the weight of decades in the legal system heavy on his shoulders. "You're out of your depth, kid," he says, just loud enough for them both to hear. "You don't even know who you've arrested." Grant's expression hardens. His pride is on the line, and this is starting to feel like a game he doesn't understand. Meanwhile, Harris is beginning to question her own role in all this. Why was she called to the scene so quickly? Was it a routine stop or something more? Her gut tells her there's more to this, but she's too afraid to dig deeper, not when everything is already spiraling. The judge doesn't wait for an answer. He takes a slow step back, his presence almost as intimidating as the suit he once wore in court. "Call your superior," he orders. Grant hesitates but then reaches for his radio. The officer's voice crackles as he requests backup, but something in the judge's tone suggests this won't end the way they expect. Behind all the tension, there's a subplot that no one sees. Grant and Harris don't know that the judge's past isn't just filled with cases. It's entangled with secrets that could ruin entire careers. He might have retired, but not from the people who still remember the power he wielded. Some of them are in positions they shouldn't be. Some have been hiding their mistakes for years. The judge has his own reasons for being out here today, reasons that are only just beginning to unfold. As the backup car arrives, Harris pulls back slightly, trying to make sense of the scene in front of her. There's something unsettling about the judge's calm demeanor. It almost feels like he's orchestrating this entire encounter, as if he knew it would happen. Grant, still standing his ground, barks orders to the new officers who just showed up. They don't know what they're walking into. The moment is interrupted when Grant finally speaks again, his tone much quieter now. "You want to tell me who you really are?" The judge looks at him with a flicker of disdain, the kind of disdain a man reserves for someone who hasn't learned their place. "I told you, officer. I am a retired federal judge. But what you're really asking is who you're messing with." He pauses, just long enough for the weight of his words to sink in. "If I were you, I'd start worrying about your next move." Grant's face tightens. It's clear the officers haven't grasped the gravity of the situation, and now it's slipping through their fingers like sand. They think it's about power and respect, but there's a darker force at play, a force they haven't even begun to see. As the story deepens, the viewer can't help but wonder who will crack first. Will Harris finally open her eyes to the corruption she's surrounded by, or will she continue to follow blindly? And what of the judge? Why is he so calm, and what is he planning? The tension builds, and the stakes grow higher with every passing second. Neither side is backing down, and something tells the audience that this confrontation will change everything, both for the officers and the judge. The minutes stretch on, the tension thick in the air. Harris, her back straight, but her eyes flickering with doubt, watches as Grant paces around, trying to assert control over a situation that's slipping through his fingers. The backup officers stand awkwardly by, still not fully understanding the magnitude of what's happening. They look at the judge with confusion, not knowing whether to be fearful or dismissive. The silence is deafening. Grant's voice cuts through it, low but filled with venom. "I've had enough of this. You think you're untouchable just because of some title. You think you can just walk in here, throw that badge around, and we'll all fall in line." His hands ball into fists, the anger in his voice betraying the fear beginning to creep in. The judge remains silent, but just as the intensity peaks, the first cracks begin to show. The older officer's face shifts, just a flicker of doubt, but enough to be noticed. In that brief moment, the judge leans in, his voice low. "I don't want your apology. I want you to fix this, and you will, or things will get much worse." The crowd of officers, now visibly uneasy, begins to shift. They've all heard rumors of men like the judge, the ones who've been in power long enough to know the real rules of the game. But none of them have ever faced someone like him, and as the seconds stretch on, they start to realize they've miscalculated, and it may already be too late to undo what they started. Every move now feels like it could be the one that shatters everything. But the final confrontation hasn't come yet, and the stakes are higher than any of them. For a moment, the tension is so thick that it's almost suffocating. It feels like everything is hanging by a thread, and one wrong move will send it all spiraling into chaos. The audience is left holding their breath, wondering what's about to happen next. In the background, Harris shifts uncomfortably. She's torn. Her loyalty to the force, to the system, is being tested in a way she never imagined. She thought she knew what right and wrong were, but now she's questioning everything. What if they've been on the wrong side this whole time? The judge, ever composed, steps forward once more, his voice steady. "You're right about one thing. None of us are in control anymore, but I'm not the one who's going to lose." The woman glances at him, her expression unreadable. "You think this is over, Judge? Think again." As the clock ticks down to an inevitable confrontation, the screen cuts to black, leaving the audience hanging on the edge of their seats. The true conflict is just beginning, and nothing is what it seems. The silence stretches as the woman's words hang in the air. It's a moment of clarity for everyone involved. This wasn't just a routine arrest gone wrong. This was a carefully orchestrated chess game, and no one had fully realized the stakes until now. The judge's face hardens, his grip on the situation finally becoming clear. He's been playing them all along, but now the final move is at hand. "I've seen the corruption you've been hiding," the judge says, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. His gaze is steady, unwavering. "And I've been patient, too patient." Grant looks like he's about to protest, but the woman steps forward, her eyes never leaving the judge. "You think you have the upper hand?" she asks, her tone dark with finality. "You're the one who's been manipulated, not us. You've played right into my hands." The judge pauses, his brow furrowing slightly, as if something is finally clicking into place. His voice drops to a low, dangerous whisper. "No, you've played into mine. A moment of realization passes over the woman's face. In that instant, the world feels like it's tilting on its axis. She looks back at the officers, her face clouded with confusion, but before she can respond, the judge lifts his hand, signaling something. The sound of approaching sirens cuts through the tension. It's not the usual police response. They're not the ones who had been watching. These sirens belong to a different kind of force, one that none of them had been expecting. Out of nowhere, a black SUV screeches to a halt, and from it, a team of federal agents in plain clothes spill out, their guns drawn. The woman's face goes white. She knows who they are. The truth hits her like a freight